and welcome to Certified Black Weirdo, where we talk about an artist and their art in a way that is kind of weird. Or no, we won't talk about it in a way that's weird. We'll probably talk about it in a way that's weird, but we'll also be talking about somebody whose art is what I consider weird, which is just a little bit strange, a little bit offbeat, a little bit peculiar, unique, etc. Something that I appreciate in that way, the originality of it, all of that. This week we're talking about They Cloned Tyrone, which is a movie that came out 2.5 years ago and which I just watched. And I'm Angela Tharp. I do this now. And yeah, I'm a writer and a teacher, certified Black weirdo of my own definition, I guess. And I'm excited to jump in with this with you. Thank you for watching. I am in a sound booth right now and in the dark. I'm trying out like different places to record. I think I want to like be in my own little cave, but I don't want it to be too dark. So we will see how this looks in post, which I now know is a word that you can say. So I'm kind of like changing up what I'm doing again on YouTube, but I'm also going to record and post the audio as a podcast. I used to have one on Substack, and I'm just going to throw this on there. So if you're listening, but you're not seeing this, thank you for being here. I'm going to try to make this like a relatively seamless experience. But if you're watching, thank you for watching. And, today we're going to talk about They Cloned Tyrone, which is really exciting. I'm sort of focusing lately on just like weird Black art. As I've had a culture blog that sort of like, whenever I was just encountering that week, I wrote about, and I kind of just want to focus on weird Black art that's like written by people who are made, acted in, etc., by people who are, Black and pro-Black, but also kind of like offbeat or weird or like surreal, into like the zany. That's really much my vibe. That's really much my vibe. That's very much my vibe, but just like stuff that is, I don't know, just like a little strange. And so I'm going to kind of focus on that and maybe rotate between genres. My brain is so systematic. Like everything, whenever I like enjoy something, I'm like, okay, now how can you incorporate this into your routine? How can you do this forever, every week? Like my brain just like loves structure and consistency and like routine. So part of me was like, okay, I could do like a week that's a movie, and then a week that's a album, and then a week that's a book, and then a week that's just a wild card week, which I might do. But I also am going to give myself, or try to practice giving myself, the freedom to say, maybe we do 2 movies in a row. Maybe then we do a poem. Maybe then we do like a little bit more flexibility. But I think, at least for now, the umbrella is going to be weird Black art. And as the channel is called Certified Black Weirdo, I also am going to I'm going to both do like a video for each art that I'm talking about. And then I'm going to write a blog post for it. So if you like to read, you can read it. If you like to watch, you can watch it. Or you can do both. If you like a podcast, you can just listen to it. And we'll just go with that. So this week we're talking about They Cloned Tyrone, which I watched last night with my partner, and it was very good. And I think it was just on Netflix, which is funny because it feels like a movie that could be in the movie theater. Obviously, most movies feel like that. But I was surprised because I knew it was popular when it came out like 2 summers ago. But I didn't get to see it. I think me and my partner tried to like watch it, and the beginning is kind of intense. I'm also going to try not to give any spoilers. But the beginning of the movie was kind of intense. So, I was just kind of like, oh, I can't watch this right now. Like, that's too much right now. But then it's like a kind of like a thriller comedy. I'm going to give you some like comparisons that I thought of when I watched it. But, it kind of reminds me too of Bodies. Like something that's both like a mystery and you're trying to figure it out, but it's also fun. It's a little bit more serious. I mean, it's a lot more serious than Bodies. It's mostly a comedy. But it's not like all as intense as it is at the beginning. So if you tried it and you were like, I don't have the capacity for like this kind of intensity in fiction right now, it gets more silly as you go. But it's about, let's see, I wrote notes for everything except for what it's about. It's about this, and how do I do this without spoilers? But basically it's about this guy who suspects that he might be cloned, which is in the title, so not a spoiler. And, no, he doesn't really suspect that. It's basically about this guy and his friends who feel like something weird is happening in their neighborhood and then investigates that. and it's just gets really like weird and original and silly, in a way that's like so endearing and fun. But it starts out really like kind of like a drama, and then it builds on that. And then that way it also kind of reminded me of Boys in the Hood. Like the beginning of it felt like sort of like an extension of that kind of like the end of Boys in the Hood and kind of all throughout Boys in the Hood, which I wrote this whole essay on John Singleton stuff, so I know a lot about John Singleton, who made Boys in the Hood. But basically like it's kind of starts with that kind of vibe, and then it sort of goes off. And something I really, really liked is how it becomes speculative. And when I did my dissertation on like restlessness in Black literature and film and Black culture, like the feeling of just like I don't know what to do, I have this anxiety and like there's nowhere for it to go, and also like the restlessness of like knowing who you are and knowing who the loved ones in your lives are, but also knowing that how you're perceived isn't who you are, and yet that has like a huge impact on your life, how people perceive you, if they perceive you as a threat, if they perceive you as like not as human as them, like all of white supremacy and racism, like that affects who you are, or like how you move through the world, even if it's not true. And W.E.B. Du Bois calls that double consciousness. It's like the moving through the world both as how you see yourself and how others see you. And in some way that's true for everyone. Like how you're perceived isn't who you are for the most part, unless it's like by your closest friends and family. But if you're Black, or if you're like trans, or if you're, you know, an immigrant, if you're a group that people are projecting onto you really negative things and don't like you, then like those perceptions really, really affect who you are, right? Or not necessarily who you are, but like how you move through the world, right? And so it's like, if I see myself and the Black people in my lives, or the trans people, or the immigrants, or what, you know, the people in my life, if I see us as specific and in depth, but somebody else sees us as like flat and a monster, then that creates restlessness, because it's like, oh my God, how am I gonna live if I can't be seen, you know, by the majority, not necessarily the majority of people, but by like the people in power, right? And so W.E.B. Du Bois calls that double consciousness. Sort of. He like has different definitions. He also considers like the two-ness of being like a Black person and being an American, which I thought was like interesting, because I think today we kind of see ourselves as like Black Americans, not like I'm American and I'm also Black, and those have nothing to do with each other. They're very tied to a lot of Black people, including me. But that feeling of like, he also describes it as like, yeah, how you are perceived and then who you actually are, and that disconnect can cause a feeling of anxiety. In my dissertation, I kind of thought of it as restlessness, and I sort of traced how different artists moved beyond just restlessness as like a violence toward other people, which is like so problematic, and how many movies sort of like see Black anxiety as like immediately violence. And there's also so many people who, or like in a lot of art, like American art, the other side of the spectrum is like restlessness portrayed as like a willingness to serve. And it's like both like, you know, old school service, like literal service, like being a maid, all the movies where there's like Black maids. And, you know, today there's a weird trend of like a white show and there's like a Black therapist, and it's like that's still a sense of serving. You have to serve someone emotionally. And then there's also what like really bugs me these days, to like the ire of anyone I go to the movies with, is this like pattern of like a Black best friend in a white maid film who is like just emotionally serving their friend, but it's not reciprocated, or like there's no like exploration of their personal life and their interests. A movie that I think doesn't do this and is so good. Oh God, am I gonna remember the name? Oh God, I always forget the name. Oh my gosh. Okay, I will cut it in here. Hold on. Okay, I'm just gonna. Should I pause? I'll just circle back. But there's a movie, maybe we could make this a guessing game, where it's like three friends. One of them is the woman from Jane the Virgin, okay? One of them is the main character in the reboot of She's Gotta Have It. And one of them, I think, was in a cheerleading movie in the early 2000s. So, Brittany Snow. Oh my God, it's funny that she's the only name that I know. I guess because I was a teenager back then. Anyway, they're three best friends. I can't remember what it's called. Lakeith Stanfield is in it. And speaking of a certified Black weirdo, maybe that's what makes this relevant. And basically, it's about the like white main character's love life. She's dating. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's about the girl from Jane the Virgin. It's like about her love life. Gina Rodriguez. Okay, we're getting closer. And oh my gosh, should I just pause this and find it? Okay, hold on one second. Okay, we're back. It is called Someone Great, which is like a very generic name for such a great movie. And I always forget it. And then DeWanda Wise is a black character in it who's also in She's Gotta Have It. And then, yeah, Gina Rodriguez, DeWanda Wise, Brittany Snow, Lakeith Stanfield is a love interest. And what I love about this movie in terms of like friendship, a black friend in it, is she has her own storyline. It's not even about Gina Rodriguez, you know, but usually what happens is there's like a white main character and then a black best friend. They also don't really explore like POC friendships in movies and mainstream for the most part, but or in dating, you know, or anything like that. But their best friend, or like they're a group of three best friends, and all three of their storylines are explored, and also they give and receive emotional labor from each other. It's not just like one that is there to like shepherd the other white character into her, I don't know, life and work through all her problems with her. And so something that is really interesting to me is sort of like how this like service of black people in movies has gone from being like literal maids and literal physical service to like an emotional service. And I felt like, I don't know where I was going with it. Okay, sorry. This is all going back. We're all going back. So basically, like, in my dissertation, I kind of like identified this need to see black people as either a threat or as like a helper, as white paranoia is what I called it in my dissertation, kind of building off of Judith Butler saying white paranoia as always seeing black people as a threat. I think it's sort of like, it's kind of evolved into black people as either a threat or as like a helper, right? And if you're not a threat, if you're not a helper, I see you as a threat. But I don't like we don't always see black people as, or any minority really, as like just a person who is like not living in relation to you always, right? And I think because of like America's history of slavery, there is this sort of like connection to black people or association with black people of like, what does this have to do with whiteness, right? And with a lot of stories, there has to be some kind of like tied to like whiteness in order for it to be relevant, or even for like majority people to watch it, which is like so crazy because it's like so many of us watch movies and TV shows and all these things that don't represent us because we can relate on like a more universal level, but that's not always like flipped, you know, which is interesting. Anyway, so in my dissertation, I kind of defined white paranoia as like this need to see black people as either a threat or as a helper. And like I defined it as like something that anybody could like be struggling with, not just white people, but like anyone who sort of like values, I don't know, white culture over and white beauty standards and white like ways of moving through the world more than anybody else is sort of like someone who might struggle with white paranoia and seeing like any threat to that supremacy as a threat. Anyway, so my dissertation, I'm kind of talking about how those are the like blackness as threat and blackness as helper are like those poles that you want to kind of avoid if you want good black representation. And then I wrote my dissertation about like black artists who did that well, and how you can kind of get beyond restlessness as violence by including what your characters are thinking, or kind of showing what led to the violence, basically, instead of just being like, oh, that's just what, they're just violent, you know? And then I talked about like artists who kind of got around restlessness as just like a helping, or just like, I don't feel anything, I'm just here to help, by kind of talking about the idea of masking, which is like when you pretend to be okay so that people don't like know your business, basically, and then you like untake that mask off with the people that you trust. And then a third thing that I wrote about my dissertation, which is all ties back to this movie, which I promise I will talk about, is the idea of getting beyond those two poles of like black people as threat or black people as helper by imagining other worlds is great. You know, black fantasy, great, we love it. Black Panther, we love it. And Kate Jemison, we love it. Her stuff is so good. The fifth season, etc. But kind of also thinking about like how can we exist in this world differently. And this is like a little bit more speculative than what I was talking about. I was talking about like just like instead of like sticking to the realist ending of things, which is usually pretty dramatic and violent for Black people, in your stories, just imagining a better world where like they're safe, right? And so I talked about that, but what I love about this is that it sort of like takes this thing like getting murdered, and then it builds it into what if that wasn't the end? And I think that kind of the speculative nature of that is really hopeful, and it gives hope to other people, which I loved. Okay, so anyway, it's about this guy and his friends who are trying to figure out this mystery about what's going on in their community, in their neighborhood. It reminded me of Moonlight. Oh, well, okay, no. Sorry, before you guys were like, hey! Some people love Moonlight. I personally really like it. I think it's very beautiful, but some people kind of think it's like doing this thing of like leaning into the hardships of Blackness in a way that feels like not great. I don't know. I personally think it's beautiful, and maybe it's also a thing of like when something comes really popular, people think it's uncool. But it reminds me of Moonlight in this very specific way of the colors at the beginning of it were so gorgeous, and there's sort of like this like low light, like night shot aesthetic that also just like had all of these like blues and greens and things like that. It was just really stunning at the beginning. And then in more like broad ways, it reminds me of I'm a Virgo. If you haven't seen that, great show on, I think it's on like Amazon Prime, but Boots Riley made it, who also made Sorry to Bother You. And he's also coming out with a new movie that looks so great, and a lot of like weird Black artists that I love are in it. So anyway, this I'm a Virgo is like similar, where it's like our world, but this like one weird thing is happening. And it's like just like fun, but it's also like symbolic in a way that's great. Boomtown by Nick Stone, it reminded me of that, which is this novel that came out really recently. Really great. It's set in Atlanta. It's also like kind of funny, but also a mystery, and also kind of like thinking through these like concepts that this movie is thinking about in like ways that are really propulsive and meaningful. So it reminded me of that. It reminded me of the TV show Atlanta in the sense that it was like just like had a vibe, and also like this movie, They Cloned Tyrone, had a lot of scenes in cars, which I love. And it reminded me of the episode in Atlanta where they like go to that white frat house. I don't know if you guys have seen Atlanta. If you haven't, you should definitely see this episode. I love it. I used to teach it, and then I rewatched it. I was like, oh, maybe it depends on how old these students are, where I'm just teaching them about this weird Atlanta episode that's going to be kind of hard to write about. But they like go to this frat house, and the frat guy starts singing Laffy Taffy, which is like so random and weird. And then on their way home, they're driving back, and Ern, who's the main character, gets in a fight with Paperboy, who's his cousin, and he's like trying to get Paperboy, like he's like way smaller than Paperboy. He's like trying to get him to fight him, and then and they're like in the car, and it's just like this really tight, like, I don't know, really, really tight scene, and then it's all shot in a car, and then they get out the car, and the fight pursues, and it's not very long, but I don't know, I'm just like into the car scene aesthetic, and like all that these artists are doing in this like small space. Also thinking about like Queen and Slim and all the car scenes there. It reminded me of that. It reminded me of Get Out a little bit, and like it's like speculative sci-fi-y turn, like soft sci-fi. And then it reminded me of, this is sort of like a nerdy reference, but Black Aliveness, which is an academic text. I'll put the author. I'm gonna throw some little notes up when I do my post, or post production, not post of the YouTube video. Anyway, Black Aliveness. I read like the intro in the first chapter. I need to like finish it. I think that's going to be my December project. But it kind of talks about this idea of like a Black world, and like just kind of like exploring Black culture from within, instead of always thinking of it as like in contradistinction with whiteness, and the beauty and the aliveness within that world, and how that sort of like, I don't know, bolsters the resilience you need to face the outside of that world. And it reminded me of that just in how specific this movie was, and like how communal it was, and how like it saw the characters who they kind of like were like, I don't know, creative representations of in the community. It just was like, it saw them, you know, which is sort of such a antidote to being stereotyped or being caricatured or being portrayed flatly or being portrayed only as like a servant in like either a literal or emotional way, or, you know, it's like the antidote to that are these Black artists and these Black weirdos who are making, sorry, I had a little notification there, who are making art that's so specific and like really nodding toward that Black world. So I love that. Yeah. And then what I loved in general, yeah, the depth. There's a female main character, which I loved because so many, I would say a good amount of Black movies that I love that are weird, have like guy characters, which, you know, my friends make fun of me because I like am a Black academic. Well, I was Black. I'm a Black PhD, but I now just teach and do this, and write, you know, but, they make fun of me because I like study Black men too, like Black male artists and not just Black women. and I am very much a feminist, and I very much love Black women art and Black women people, including myself and the Black women in my life. But, I don't know. I also just kind of consume everything. I kind of came up in a household where I listened to a lot of stuff and just watched a lot of movies and like thought about gender in like the practical way of like, I deserve the same rights as everybody else. Like, I'm not one to be told I have to do anything because I'm a woman, you know? I don't want to be told like, you can wear this, but you can't wear that. You can do this, but you can't do that. You get these privileges, but this person gets more because they're a guy. Like, I hate that. But the art of it, like, just like what I consume, I'm just kind of like open to consuming everything and then being like, hey, don't love that. We can still need to work on that. But I think like for me, it's really important that like within Black culture, especially, I'm interacting with everything and like in conversation about the things that are problematic, you know, not just like co-signing off on everything, including Richard Pryor, which I'm working on, like a project on, you know. He didn't do everything correctly, but I think it's really interesting to talk about what wasn't correct and what was, you know, and to kind of see all of that in context. Anyway, so I appreciated that in this, there's a woman main character or a femme main character who is really, really well done. And all of the main characters who are like, the guy, what's his name? Fontaine? Slick, who's played by Jamie Foxx, who does such a great job. He does such a great job as that character. And then Yo-Yo is the woman character, right? And all of them are really, really specific, and they have both like good and bad traits, and they're really well done. And I love that there was like a female main character here that was not just the love interest, but like was a part of the conversation of what was happening and like had moments that were for her. You know, I appreciated that. I appreciate the sense of humor. I thought this movie was hilarious, and I also thought it was so well written. I love watching movies with subtitles, because I like to see what they're saying, like what the artist wrote. You know, as a writer, I like care about that like as much as anything else of the movie, like the plot or how it was shot, or, you know, I don't know, the aesthetic. Like I care about that, but like I love to see good dialogue and good storytelling, like written down, reading it. And I thought this movie was like really, really well written and just like really specific in that way. So this is kind of like a weird fun thing, and I'm going to wrap this up soon. I know it's getting kind of long, but, a weird fun thing that I really liked here was, I heard about this phenomenon, which maybe you have too, that like a lot of movies are getting, produced in a way where you could be on your phone and you can still watch the movie and know what's going on. And I thought that was going to be like a horrible thing. And maybe it is. This is like the only movie that reminded me of that I've seen lately. But something that this movie did, I don't know if it was because of that or if they were going to do it anyway, but like there had like checkpoints throughout the film where the characters kind of had a conversation about like what had just happened and what they had to figure out. And it might just be because it was a mystery, but it was like kind of weirdly affirming. And I'm like, maybe more movie. I mean, somebody's going to be like, what are you doing? This is the end of film, you know, but like, it was weirdly affirming to like, know, okay, this is what I saw. And now you've just given me a recap of that. And now we're doing the next part. And then you're giving me a recap of that. And I like never felt lost because they were having these conversations of like, well, you know, okay, we went to there and this happened. And like, and then, you know, that happened. And now we got to figure out, and I'm like, oh, okay, I know where we, like I was watching, I wasn't on my phone, but I know where we are now, and I know where we are. And I found those like weirdly, I don't know if they did it because of the double phone thing, and that's kind of like in the conversation I saw on social media about that, they were saying like you have to like do like make sure that people can follow even if they're like on another screen watching the movie at the same time. And I wasn't doing that, but I found, I found those recaps really helpful. And then, this isn't a spoiler. Well, maybe I won't tell you guys this. When you finish the movie, tell me what you think about the very end in the comments if you watch it, because I really liked the way it ended. I thought it was like really perfect and really creative. Okay. And then I thought I was going to do this weird thing where I read some of my favorite quotes from the movie. But it's already at 25 minutes. Don't let this take it too long. I'll read you one. There was this moment, this isn't a spoiler, but there was this moment where one of the characters was kind of like in a weird place, and his friend said, "You think you might need some water?" And he was like, "Are you just dehydrated? Like, is this why you're acting like this?" And I just thought that was like so random. This movie had like a lot of like really lines that were like so random and perfect, and I really enjoyed that. So I'll just leave you with that. Thank you for listening. This is kind of like a weird, it's helpful because for the podcast, I used to have a podcast where I would like read my, what was I going to say? Read my blog post, and then I would, talk about it as I went. And it was kind of like this, where it was just like very associative, where I was like, oh, this reminds me of this, and that reminds me of this, and this reminds me of that. I just kind of like weirdly did that. And so this kind of reminded me of that, of just like having that space. And I think having this weird little cave to do it is helpful, because I don't know, I'm weird, and it's nice to just like sit in the sound booth and be like, let's talk about some random things together. Anyway, so thank you for listening. There's going to be another one next week. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. There's some movies I want to see, like Zola. I mean, I loved Zola the first time I saw it, but I want to see that again. And then there's another one. Sorry to bother you. I saw like when it came out. I kind of want to see that again. The theme for now, maybe for a while, is just weird Black creative stuff. Stuff that's kind of surreal or strange or like fun or weird, weird. Off the beaten path a little bit. It can be mainstream, but like it's kind of like an oddball made it. It's kind of the vibe. And so if you have any recs, please put them in the comments. I'm going to write a blog post about this too. So I'm thinking every week, maybe I'll start with the video, so it's not just like the video is just referencing the blog the whole time. But yeah, so I'm going to write a blog post about this. You're welcome to read it. The link will be, if you go to the link on my profile, it'll be in there. And then, and then next week we'll see what we do. Maybe it'll be a movie. Maybe it'll be a poem or a song or an album. Maybe it'll be I am going to start reading Percival Everett's, what is it? I Am Not Sidney Poitier. So that's going to take a while because I'm a slow reader, but eventually we'll talk about that. Hopefully. And anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging out in this little weird cave with me. And if you liked this video, let me know if you want, or just send good vibes. And you can subscribe, you can like it. What else can you do? Give me an air high five. Rewind it, and now you're ready. Okay, here we go. Or just keep watching. It's nice to hang out with you guys, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.